I saw my sister's wedding invitation pop up on my phone, AR filter sparkling, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. Was this it? The final straw? The reception was, well, let's just say I ended up sitting in the hallway. Not even the nice hallway. The one near the restrooms, with the flickering fluorescent light and the faint aroma of industrial cleaner. My sister Clara hadn't even noticed. Or maybe she had and just didn't care. Honestly, at that point, I was beyond expecting anything else. What would you do? Would you just sit there, quietly seething, pretending it didn't sting like 1,000 paper cuts? I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I left. Leaving that reception hall was one of the hardest and easiest things I've ever done. Hard because it felt like I was abandoning some last vestige of hope for a normal family. Easy because the alternative was slowly suffocating under a mountain of disrespect. I didn't even tell anyone. I just slipped out, hailed a self-driving taxi, 2025 and we still have weddings, and went home. The hot missed calls from my mother, frantic texts from my other sister, Emily. Her voice was tight, bordering on hysterical. Amelia, what did you do? I left a wedding I wasn't wanted at, I said, trying to keep my voice even. What's the big deal? The big deal? The big deal is that Clara's fiancé, David, is gone. And so is half her inheritance. Okay, now that got my attention. David was a shark. A smooth-talking, impeccably dressed, venture capitalist shark. Clara, bless her heart, was blinded by his charm and the promise of a lavish lifestyle. I always suspected something was off, but I could never put my finger on it. What do you mean gone? I asked, my stomach churning. Like ran off into the sunset with a suitcase full of cash gone? Exactly, and it gets worse. He emptied her crypto wallet too. Something about a business investment she signed off on last week. Amelia, this is a disaster. I hung up, my mind racing. Business investment? Clara barely knew how to use the AR grocery delivery app, let alone navigate the complexities of blockchain finance. Something was seriously wrong. My first instinct was to call Clara, but I knew she'd be a mess. Emily was probably already dealing with that. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I started digging. I knew David had a background in tech, supposedly a coding genius. But something felt off. So I started searching his name, not just on regular search engines, but on the deep web, the dark web, anywhere I could find information. And then I found it. A forum, hidden behind layers of encryption, discussing a series of fraudulent investment schemes. And there, in black and white, was David's name, linked to a shell corporation based in the Caymans. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was who else was listed as a beneficiary. My father. Could it be? My own father, involved in a scam with my sister's fiancé. It was unbelievable. He'd always been financially conservative, let's say. But criminal? My hands shook as I screenshot the evidence, a mix of disgust and disbelief washing over me. What do you do when your own family is involved in a crime that could ruin everything? I decided to confront my father. I found him in his study, surrounded by stacks of financial reports and holographic stock tickers. He looked up, surprised to see me. Amelia, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the wedding? I was, I said, my voice tight, until I was relegated to the hallway. But that's not why I'm here. I know about David. I know about the Shell Corporation. His face paled. He tried to bluster, to deny, but the truth was written all over his face. It's not what you think, he stammered. I didn't know. Didn't know what? That he was planning to steal half of Clara's inheritance? That you were going to profit from it? He hung his head. I was in debt, Amelia. Deep debt. The business was failing. David offered me a way out. At the expense of your own daughter? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was going to pay it back, I swear, before the wedding. But then... He trailed off. The then was obvious. Then, the plan had gone sideways. David had seen an opportunity to take everything and run. and my father, blinded by desperation, had let it happen. I left his study, feeling numb. The weight of the betrayal was crushing. Clara was devastated, Emily was frantic, and my father was a broken man, and it all stemmed from that one decision, that one moment of humiliation at the wedding. If I had just stayed, if I had just played the part of the dutiful daughter, would any of this have happened? That night, I received an anonymous message on my encrypted messaging app. Just one word: silence. My blood ran cold. Someone knew I was digging. Someone wanted me to stay quiet. Was it David, my father, or someone else entirely? Amelia, I think Clara's missing. She left a note saying she needed to clear her head, but it's been 12 hours. Her phone is off. Missing? This was escalating quickly. I decided to visit Clara's apartment. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside. The place was a mess. Clothes strewn everywhere, drawers pulled open. It looked like someone had been searching for something. And then I saw it. A small encrypted USB drive, hidden under a pile of scarves. I plugged it into my laptop. Inside was a single file, a video recording. I clicked play. The video showed David sitting in a dimly lit room, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice cold and calculating, "it means things didn't go as planned. I'm leaving the country, and I'm taking everything with me. As for your family, well, let's just say they'll regret crossing me." He then proceeded to detail the entire scam, implicating my father and revealing a network of offshore accounts. But then, he said something that made my heart stop. He mentioned a backup plan, something he would initiate if he was ever threatened. And that backup plan involved Emily. He had evidence that Emily had been secretly leaking confidential information from her job at a major pharmaceutical company. Information that could land her in jail for years. He was blackmailing us all. I had to warn Emily. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I rushed to her apartment, adrenaline pumping. I opened the door, and there she was, holding a letter. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows everything. What am I going to do, Amelia?" I knew what I had to do. I had a choice to make. I could expose David, save Clara's inheritance, and clear my father's name. But in doing so, I would also be exposing Emily and sending her to prison. Or I could keep quiet, protect Emily, but let David get away with his crimes and leave my family financially ruined. What would you do? Could you sacrifice one sister to save another? Could you live with the guilt of letting a criminal go free? There had to be a way to expose David without implicating Emily. Then I remembered something David had said in the video. He mentioned a specific server where he was storing all the stolen funds. A server located in a country with weak cybersecurity laws. I called an old friend, a cybersecurity expert I hadn't spoken to in years. I explained the situation, leaving out Emily's involvement. He agreed to help. Working through the night, he managed to hack into the server and trace the funds back to David's offshore accounts. We gathered enough evidence to present to the authorities, evidence that was irrefutable and didn't mention Emily's leak. The work, sir. Clara's inheritance was recovered. My father, though still facing legal consequences for his involvement, was spared from financial ruin. But Emily was still in danger. David's backup plan was still in play. He had copies of the incriminating evidence against her. I knew I had to get those copies. I needed to find out where he had hidden them. I went back to Clara's apartment. The scene of the initial crime. I searched every nook and cranny, every drawer, every closet. Hidden behind a loose panel in the wall, a small unmarked hard drive. Inside were copies of the evidence against Emily, but there was something else too. A hidden folder, password protected. I spent hours trying to crack the password. Inside the folder was a document detailing David's entire criminal operation, including the names of his accomplices. And one of those names was my mother. My own mother. I couldn't believe it. She had been working with David all along, helping him launder money and cover his tracks. The truth was, the entire family was implicated in this mess, each playing their own twisted part. I went to my mother, confronted her with the evidence. She didn't even deny it. She said she did it for the family to secure our future, that she thought she was being clever, that she could outsmart David. She was wrong, so terribly wrong. In the end, I had to make a choice. Expose my mother and Emily and see them face the consequences of their actions, or protect them and let David's other accomplices go free. I chose to protect them. I gave the hard drive to the authorities, but I omitted my mother and Emily's names. I couldn't do it. I couldn't betray my own family, no matter how much they had hurt me. Clara eventually forgave me for leaving the wedding. She understood why I did what I did. She started therapy and began to rebuild her life. My father faced legal repercussions, but he eventually paid his debt to society. He and I are still working on rebuilding our relationship. Emily quit her job at the pharmaceutical company and started a new life, far away from the shadow of her past. My mother and I are estranged. I don't know if we'll ever be able to reconcile, but I learned a valuable lesson. Family isn't always about blood. It's about loyalty, honesty, and forgiveness. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is forgive the people who have hurt you the most. Leaving my sister's wedding was the catalyst for everything that followed. It was the moment I realized that I had to stand up for myself, that I couldn't let others define my worth. It was a painful journey, filled with betrayal and heartbreak. But in the end, it made me stronger. It made me realize that I was capable of anything. So what would you have done in my place? Would you have chosen revenge or forgiveness? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more true crime tales. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Write what you'd choose. Maybe, just maybe, you can help me understand if I did the right thing. The silence from my mother was deafening. I remember staring at her across the sterile kitchen, the holographic refrigerator displaying a shimmering image of organic vegetables that we could no longer afford. The weight of her betrayal pressed down on me, heavier than any physical burden. It wasn't just the crime. It was the sheer audacity, the cold calculation with which she had jeopardized all of us. I began to question everything I thought I knew about her, about our family. What else had she been hiding? What other secrets lay buried beneath the surface of our seemingly normal suburban life? It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each revelation more acrid and stinging than the last. And Emily, dear Emily, was a constant worry. She had become withdrawn, almost catatonic. The fear of exposure hung over her like a dark cloud, stifling her joy, her creativity. She barely left her apartment, spending her days staring blankly at the wall, the glow of her abandoned AR design projects flickering on her face. I tried to comfort her, to reassure her that everything would be okay, but the words felt hollow, even to my own ears. How could I promise her a future when I wasn't even sure I had one myself? Then, one day, I received a package. No return address, just my name scrawled on the front in messy handwriting. Inside was a single object, a burner phone, and on the screen, a message. Meet me, alone. Warehouse District, Pier 7, midnight. My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be David. He was back, or at least, he was close. What would you do? Would you walk into a trap, knowing that your life could be in danger? Or would you turn your back, protect yourself, and leave your family to face the consequences? I knew I couldn't ignore it. If David was back, it meant that Emily was still at risk, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do everything in my power to protect her. I drove to the warehouse district, the self-driving car navigating the deserted streets with an eerie precision. The neon city lights flashed over the deserted alleyways, casting long, distorted shadows. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay. Pier 7 was a crumbling concrete structure, the rusted metal groaning in the wind. I stepped inside, my senses on high alert. The interior was dark and damp, the only light coming from a flickering bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. "David," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. A figure emerged from the shadows, but it wasn't David. It was someone else entirely, a woman. Tall, with short cropped hair, dressed in tactical gear. "You must be Amelia," she said, her voice cold and professional. "I'm Agent Reynolds, Federal Bureau of Investigation." FBI? What was going on? Had David been working with the government all along? "David isn't who you think he is," Agent Reynolds continued. "He's a con artist, a master manipulator. But he's also working for us. He's been gathering intelligence on a network of cyber criminals involved in stealing proprietary data from pharmaceutical companies." My blood ran cold. Emily. David had been using Emily as bait, setting her up to be caught. "He was supposed to turn her in," Agent Reynolds said. "But then he went rogue. He stole the data, emptied the accounts, and disappeared. We've been tracking him ever since. She needed my help. They believed David was planning to sell the stolen data to the highest bidder, potentially jeopardizing millions of lives. They needed me to lure him out, to set a trap." "I know this is a lot to ask," Agent Reynolds said, "but you're the only one who can get close to him. You're the only one he trusts." Trust. David didn't trust anyone. He was using me, manipulating me, just like he had manipulated everyone else. But the agent was right. She needed my help, and I couldn't turn my back on her. And there was a way to protect Emily. The authorities promised Emily immunity from prosecution. In exchange for her cooperation, they would ensure that she faced no legal consequences. Now the dilemma: help the FBI and guarantee immunity for Emily, but risk my life and possibly face dire consequences if David discovers my true intentions, or refuse the offer and let David continue his criminal activities, risking Emily's future and the safety of countless others. To gain David's trust, she has to act as if she's still on his side, furious at her family for allegedly ruining their plans. I crafted a message to David, using an encrypted channel I knew he monitored. They took everything I typed, letting my anger and despair flow into the words. "My family has turned against me. I'm ready to leave with you. Let's disappear together." Within hours, a reply came. A location, a time, a deserted airfield on the outskirts of the city. As I drove there, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I knew this could be the end, but I couldn't back down now. I had come too far. At the airfield, a small private jet waited on the runway. David emerged from the shadows, his face etched with a mixture of relief and suspicion. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and cautious. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Where else would I go?" I replied, trying to sound convincing. "My family has abandoned me." He studied me for a moment, his eyes searching for any sign of deception. Then he smiled. "Good," he said. "Then let's get out of here." As we boarded the plane, I discreetly activated the tracking device I had hidden in my purse, a device provided by Agent Reynolds. It was a one-way ticket. There was no turning back now. As the plane took off, soaring above the city lights, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I had no idea what lay ahead. I only knew that I was playing a dangerous game, one that could have deadly consequences. The plane landed on a remote island in the Pacific. David led me to a secluded villa, surrounded by lush tropical vegetation. It was like something out of a movie, a paradise hideaway for the rich and corrupt. But beneath the surface, I could sense the tension, the unease. David was paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. He knew he was being hunted, and he was determined to stay one step ahead of the authorities. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally. Every word, every gesture was carefully calculated. I knew that one wrong move could blow my cover and put my life in danger. Then I overheard a phone call. David was talking to someone about selling the stolen data to a foreign government. He was planning to hand it over in person. This was the FBI's chance. This was my chance. What do you do? Do you alert the authorities, jeopardizing the mission but risking countless lives if the data falls into the wrong hands? Or do you wait, playing along, hoping for a better opportunity to expose David and recover the information? It was a moral tightrope, and the consequences of a wrong step could be catastrophic. I decided to alert Agent Reynolds. I couldn't risk waiting any longer. The potential consequences were too dire. Using a prearranged code, I sent a brief encrypted message. The eagle is about to fly. That was the signal. The authorities would move in, but I knew that David was watching me. He was suspicious, always questioning my motives. I had to be careful to avoid raising any red flags. The beep. We were leaving the island. He didn't say where we were going, but I knew it was the rendezvous point for the data transfer. The closer we got, the more anxious I became. I could feel the net closing in, the tension building to a breaking point. As we arrived at the location, a remote airfield nestled deep in the jungle, I saw a private jet waiting on the runway. A group of men in dark suits stood nearby, their faces grim and expressionless. This was it. The moment of truth. David led me towards the men, his hand gripping my arm tightly. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice smooth and confident, "I believe you're here to collect something of mine." One of the men stepped forward, his eyes fixed on David. "Indeed," he said. "We have been expecting you." As they began to discuss the terms of the deal, I noticed something strange. One of the men kept glancing at me, his expression unreadable. And then it hit me. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my purse. He knew about the tracking device. David had set me up. He had known about my connection to the FBI all along. He had been using me to lead them into a trap. "I think it's time we had a little chat, Amelia," David said, his voice suddenly cold and menacing. He grabbed my arm and dragged me away from the group, towards a secluded area near the edge of the jungle. "I know who you are," he hissed, his grip tightening. "I know what you've been doing." My heart pounded in my chest. I had been exposed. My cover was blown. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," I said, trying to appear calm, though my insides were churning. "I never trusted you, Amelia. You were always too good to be true." He pushed me against a tree, his face inches from mine. "What do you think is going to happen to you now?" he snarled.